Hi, everyone. Welcome to Module 2, The Science of Sustainability. And as before, in Module 1, I just want to say a few words to get us started and talk a little bit about the expectations for this learning module. Now, in the first module, we explored the concept and the somewhat contentious history of sustainability. I think it's being set down as a fundamental understanding that sustainability cuts across environment, culture, societies, politics, and it should be understood as an inclusive concept, concern for the well being of not only human communities, but the totality of living ecosystems and the cycles and the systems on which all life depends. So to that end, it's important to delve a little bit into the science of sustainability, where there are core facts to which we must stay true. And these truths have largely come to us through the natural sciences. However, these scientific principles, reflect what many societies have intuitively known and lived by for millennia. It's important to acquaint ourselves with these unquestioned truths. And I think we are starting to see what happens when we deviate or ignore those basic essential truths that come to us through the natural sciences about how our ecosystems, how our atmospheres, how the systems on which we depend are constructed and held together, and how they are in balance. The great physicist Fritjof Capra, and we're going to meet him in this module through his work on sustainability and ecological literacy. He reminds us that the term sustainable has been overused and often misused. We talked a little bit about this. We referred to this a little. It's articulating clearly what we mean by the term sustainability is of utmost importance. Some people are willing to abandon the term because it is so contentious. However, I think we can reclaim the word by rooting it to what it originally meant. Capra reminds us that to develop sustainable human communities, we do not have to start from square one. We have models, and there have been human communities that have sustained themselves over generations. But Capra reminds us that the most powerful models we have are nature's ecosystems. The biosphere has an inherent ability to sustain life. Having a basic understanding of how ecosystems have organized themselves to sustain life over billions of years, it's important to being ecologically literate and fully grasping the fundamentals of what it means to sustain ourselves in cooperation with the environment around us. Now, science has a big role to play in facilitating this and helping us understand and allow people to truly grasp how we are embedded in an ecosystem and how we are a part of a web of life. So let's move on to the next part. We'll talk a little bit more about the module itself. Okay, so let's take a little bit of time to talk about organizing your learning for this module. So we're going to take 2 weeks to read and organize ourselves, getting ready for the learning task, which will be due later in the month. So we need to do some upfront reading and thinking and organizing before we get to that point. So really the first step is to familiarize yourself with the key concepts and ideas related to the science of sustainability. To do this, we'll be reading Margaret Robertson's chapter in her book that is available on the Moodle site. It comes from this book, Sustainability Principles and Practices, And Margaret Robertson is an American academic, very heavily involved in landscape architecture and a sustainability coordinator program at a university in Oregon. And she writes very accessibly um, about the idea of the biosphere and living systems. And in her chapter, she explores energy, matter, and all the important sustainability concepts having to do with cycles. In her chapter, she then takes a quick tour of the four major Earth systems that correspond roughly to rock, air, water, and organisms. Robertson then turns to the notion of ecosystems and that all important question, very basic question, what is life? With a quick tour of Earth system science and the Gaia theory that was put forth by James Lovelock. Um, don't worry too much about the reading, or if this sounds very technical. It's not in the sense that it's concise and succinct, and it is accessible to, I think, a general reader. And the idea is that it serves as a primer or refresher for some basic biological concepts that we really need to understand in order to think more deeply about sustainability. Next is we go back to our text. Martin Mulligan in chapter 9 of your text. He takes some time and covers some of the same ground as Robertson, so it will be a good review. He links the science and the ecological concepts back to social and political movements, like the idea of the commons and the notion of human responsibility. So Mulligan does a really nice job on that aspect, linking those up for us. The third reading leads us to a web resource that's dedicated to the concept of two-eyed seeing. Mi'kmaq elder Albert Johnson and Dr. Cheryl Bartlett have advanced the indigenous understanding of Western science and Aboriginal ways of knowing coming together to enrich our perspective. So I think you'll really enjoy that as a counterbalance to the Western scientific perspectives. Also take some time to look through the supplemental readings and the videos that are there over the next 2 weeks. They also contain links to further material on core sustainability concepts. And finally, toward the end of the 2 weeks, after you've done your reading and you've explored what's there, and it's taking you down all kinds of interesting avenues, hopefully, you'll initiate the forming of a group, teaming up with your colleagues in groups, and the number of people. All those things are laid out in the information on the module, and you'll be choosing a topic. And what you'll be doing with that topic is creating a teaching resource. So the idea is that you're learning a concept, familiarizing yourself with a concept, and then designing a learning unit so that you can teach the concept to someone else. So now that I've piqued your interest, let's talk a little bit more about this teaching and learning resource. The idea is that this resource, when it's developed, can be shared with others. It will be kept on a database of similar projects designed by other students in the program from years past. So the very first thing we need to do, as I mentioned, is to identify a concept. All right, so you and your group members will identify some particular concept related to the science of sustainability that you want to explore in more depth, and then provide a teaching resource so that someone picking this up will be able to teach this concept to others. So with that in mind, we need to choose an audience. So it can be a particular age group. It may be young children, adolescents. It could be adults. So we want to design a learning task for a particular group that's very clear to us at the very beginning. The next thing we want to do, of course, is to be really clear about what it is that we want to teach. What are the outcomes or the objectives that we'll be targeting? You can word those yourself. You can look to curriculum documents, provincial curriculum documents to get the language and the wording. There may be overall larger outcomes and then some very specific objectives. You want to work through that so you're targeting and you're arranging your learning tasks to meet those objectives, similar to any unit plan or lesson plan, the basic building blocks when you're designing instruction for someone else. The next one is the idea of okay, I've already done that one. Outcomes and objectives. Good. The next one is the information that we gather has to be clear, accurate, accessible, any illustrations that we're using. So the idea is that a teacher can pick this up. They may not know a lot about this particular idea. So there's some information that you provide for the teacher to allow them to understand the concept and then provide learning tasks that the teacher can then use in order to teach the students, whoever they may be. So you're going to be providing some clear information, some accessible explanations, illustrations based on your own reading and research that will be put together in a very clear and accessible way for the educator. And then, of course, we design the learning tasks. It can be one larger task or 2 to 3 shorter activities, and they will be designed to teach the concepts that are age and developmentally appropriate. And they can range from mini lessons to project-based learning activities. They can be designed for individual learners or include cooperative and group strategies suitable for the project. They may be required to take field trips. Don't limit yourself in this way by thinking, oh, well, a teacher may not be able to do this. Just dream big and design this with the idea that, yeah, there may be a field trip that would be great. I'm going to, and we're going to have that as a part of our learning task. Or it could be designed for a lab-like environment or a classroom environment, depending on the concept, of course. So the learning may be most suitable for one discipline, or it can draw on interdisciplinary approach, a cross-curricular approach, a more integrative look at it. So you can be as creative as you like in designing these activities to ensure that teachers can use them and they know that they are following some of the more forward-thinking and progressive approaches to teaching and learning, where the student is at the center of the learning experience. So there's also the opportunity for you to, as you find supplementary and extension readings, books, videos. There may be some really interesting children's literature or YA literature that deal with similar ideas that kind of support the principles being taught. There could be novels or films, poetry, art, websites, anything that you can do to allow for a resource page to go along with your teaching resource that would point the teacher and the students to other ways, other treatments of learning the concept, and it can support the teaching and learning also. So then we have our material. We're going to design our teaching resource guide, and we'll design it in a way that it's interesting and it's easy to follow and easy to read. some basic graphic design principles, which are very easy to do today with all of the software we have available to us. You can use graphics and organize the material to create an engaging interface for the teacher who is going to be using this. So use visuals to help communicate your ideas and generate interest in the material. Design a cover, include your appendices if necessary, citing the sources. Additional resources, you can also attribute any images and diagrams to the sources in there as well. So the idea is that you save it as a PDF file, and you will be posting and sharing your document in the discussion forum on the Moodle site. So there'll be opportunity to share your insights and comment to your colleagues. And as I mentioned previously, this will be an open source resource and made available as a part of our program course resource library. There may be an opportunity also, we've done it in the past, that Learning for Sustainable Future may be interested in any of the particularly in-depth examples that may emerge through this process for their own site. So we've done some things like that before. And of course, you can make it available through your own blog or your own curation page, your own web page for use for others. So I've made some samples of teaching resource guides from previous groups available to serve as a model and a guide for you. Of course, the parameters are open to your own creative process and how you would like to approach it. So see the due date attached to the module, and the evaluation rubric is also there. And as we get a little closer, within a couple of weeks, we'll be coming back to this and answering your questions and talking about some of the things we need to think about that will go into our teaching resource guide that will be due towards the end of the month. Okay, good. Just a little overview. Talk soon.